Can start back up right now. All right. Mr. Heiss, go right ahead.
All right, thank you. Sorry, I was talking outside, and sorry about that. Great to see you all. Thank you for having us here this morning. We've just come here from Raven County, and but it's great to be here with you. Listen, I want to just take a moment, and we'll open up for some Q&A here for as much as you want to talk, but I want to just share with you a little bit how I got in this race. Of course, I'm the current congressman for the 10th district, just south of here, and I'm in my fourth term and my last. But ever since being in Congress, I've been a part of the Oversight Committee. I'm now the ranking member of the GovOps, Government Operations Subcommittee up there, which is a very influential subcommittee. In fact, Mark Meadows was the ranking member, and when he went to the White House, I took Mark's place in that role. And I share that because this is what got me involved in this whole election issue and kind of on the tip of the spear of what's happening here in Georgia. About 2.5 years ago, the Democrats in Oversight Committee started pushing for a federal takeover of our elections. And of course, you all know our Constitution is very clear that the time, place, and manner of elections are to be left to the states. This is a state issue. And the Democrats started pushing for a federal takeover of our elections. H.R. 1, you may have heard of that, H.R. 4, some of these other things. And so those of us in oversight started pushing back as hard as we could against this. And then COVID comes along, and at that point they kicked it into high gear. It seemed like we were having hearing after hearing after hearing on the necessity for this federal takeover of elections. And all of a sudden it became, people are not going to be able to go to the ballot boxes. They're going to be sick. They're going to be fearful. It's going to be dangerous for them. We've got to send ballots to these people, all this stuff. And I wish I had time to go into the details of what H.R. 1 was like, but it's horrible, horrible legislation. Like sending live ballots to everyone on the voter registration files. Ballot harvesting was legalized, would have been in all 50 states, all this kind of horrible legislation. So we were pushing back big time on that. In March 2 years ago, because of this, what was happening on that federal level, myself and every member of the Republican delegation from Georgia, we had a conference call with Brad Raffensperger. And in that call, we told him, we said, Brad, here's what's happening in D.C. There is an attempt to take over our elections from the federal level. And we were hearing rumors that Stacey Abrams was wanting to do the same thing in Georgia. And so we said, Brad, here's what's happening in D.C. We understand Stacey's want to do the same thing. And we urged him, we urged him not to send out absentee ballot requests to everyone on our voter registration file. We said, Brad, this is going to be a disaster if you go down this path. We didn't know till months after that call. Months later, we found out that 2 weeks before that call, Brad had actually already made the deal with Stacey. He never mentioned it to us, didn't say a word, but literally the cake was already baked, and he never said a word to us in that conversation. But we had that call to try to just urge him what was happening and to not go there. Well, he did it anyways. We all, in fact, I could share with you as a ranking member of the GovOps, we had a hearing, and I actually called Brad to be a witness. And I never anticipated he would, but he did. This was in December of 2020. He came as a witness, and I asked him personally, because he'd already done it, the election was over, and personally I asked him, Brad, why did you send out these absentee ballot requests? Knowing that our registration files are so inaccurate, why did you do this? Why did you make the deal with Stacey? And he said, and we have it on record, he said, we feared a lawsuit by Stacey Abrams, and we didn't want to go. Y'all, literally for fear of a lawsuit, he gave the farm away for our election integrity to Stacey Abrams. And so, listen, through all this, I'm sharing this with you because it is through these experiences on oversight, these conversations with Brad, that I became kind of the tip of the spear on this issue from at least from the federal side. I was not by any means the only one in the fight, but I kind of became the tip of the spear. I was the one that challenged our electoral votes from Georgia on the House floor, and I became the one the media went to. What's happening in Georgia? What went wrong? What's all this kind? In fact, I had right at 200 interviews just personally between the presidential election and the Senate runoff. And I share all that with you because this is how I got engaged on this election issue. Literally for the last 2.5 years, this has been one of the primary focuses that I've been engaged in the battle, both in DC and here in Georgia. But never was it on my radar to run for Secretary of State. This was not something that I've thought of. Like, I'm in a very safe congressional district in Georgia 10. And but the election issue, y'all, it just burns a hole in me. What Brad allowed to happen in this state is inexcusable. And I go back to our founding documents, and politically speaking, this is the fundamental principle, politically speaking, that we have. We are a country that is based upon the consent of the governed. And if ever the consent of the governed, the voice of the people at that ballot box, if ever that is compromised, then we're in serious trouble. As a republic, and the issue is not who wins or loses an election. The issue is, was it a fair election? And if my candidate loses, I'll be disappointed, but if it's a fair election, I know we can get back out there next time and we can try to win this thing. But if the election is rigged, if the scales are tipped, then we're in trouble if we lose our voice as the governed to make our voice at the ballot box known. And Brad let that happen. And I couldn't sit back and somewhere, I don't even remember who it was, but all in the midst of this battle, somewhere someone came up to me and said, Jody, you're the one who needs to challenge Brad. And to be honest with you, it was just like a dash of cold water. It never even crossed my mind. But we had just been on this election battle for so long, and my wife and I, seriously, we literally got on our knees at our couch and we prayed through this, and we just felt strongly that this is what we needed to do. So, and it was, I don't have time to get into all those details, but after we announced March a year ago, probably within an hour of announcing, President Trump came out with a strong endorsement. I'm sure you're aware of that, but I'm an original member of the House Freedom Caucus. We have been in a lot of battles while Trump was in the White House, and so he was just immediately, when I announced, he came out. In fact, I'm the first person in Georgia in this election cycle that he endorsed, and he did so, like I said, within an hour of me announcing. So, and obviously I'm extremely honored to have the President's endorsement and support, but he knows where I am. We have, like I said, we've been through so many battles together. But y'all listen, we have got to have a Secretary of State who will restore integrity to our election process. It is inexcusable. When Brad sends out, y'all listen, just to give you an example, these absentee ballot requests that he sent out, and I'm sure everybody in here is aware of this, but just to understand, right at 7 million unsolicited applications for ballots that he sends out in Georgia. 7 million. Conservatively, our registration files in this state are 10% inaccurate. You do the math. That means we had in the ballpark of 700,000 people who received an opportunity to vote in this state, and they are not even eligible to be on our files. And yet they receive an opportunity with virtually zero identification required. Then we have the drop-off boxes that Brad brought to us. And y'all have seen, I hope you've seen, 2,000 Mules to visualize exactly what happened. And this is what we were telling Brad, don't go down this path. You can see this coming. And now we're seeing this. You have the Zuckerbucks that came into this state, Brad allowed $50 million, Mark Zuckerberg money, 90% of it in Georgia went to tip the scales in favor of Democrats. We got no accountability to Fulton County. We've got the Dominion voting machines. We've got on and on and on and on. What Brad did in this state to destroy election integrity is inexcusable. And I'm telling you, he's got to go. He has absolutely got to go. So we've got to restore election integrity and confidence, right? We've got to restore confidence that there is only one legal ballot cast and one legal ballot counted. And to do that, part of it, I'll just share this. There has to be consequences for people who violate our election laws. And why Brad has not even been willing to go down this path, I have no idea. But there must be criminal prosecution referrals for people who violate our election laws. If there are no consequences to cheating, people are going to keep on cheating. So these are some of the things that I'm running on. And listen, I ask for your vote. I ask you for your support. We're strong in this race. We are far ahead in the polls. And listen, there are other great candidates in this race. And if by chance they were to win, I would support them. Anybody but Brad, of those who are running. We've got some great candidates running against Brad, but the truth is I'm far out in the lead. This is clearly a race between me and Brad. And with that, I ask every one of you for your vote. I'm asking you for your support. We've got to get the job done, and we've got to get it done right now. With that, let me open up for a few questions, and then I want to introduce someone else here.
Is HR 1 dead?
No. Well, temporarily, HR 1 passed the House. Oh, this is the consequences of elections. As a minority, listen, I throw every sand in the gear, and many of us do. But at the end of the day, the majority wins, right? So Nancy Pelosi pushed HR 1 and HR 4 through the House. Both of them have passed the House. They are both sitting in the Senate right now. Fortunately, I don't think the Senate's going to be able to move it because of cloture in the Senate and Senate rules. But if by chance they got it past the Senate, there's no question Biden would sign both of those. So that's where we are. Yes, they passed the House, but right now they're not moving in the Senate. So thank God for that.
Amen.
But good question.
Amen.
Yes, sir.
So would you be willing to get rid of some of the election problems is to completely get rid of mail-in ballots altogether, or?
Yeah, there ought to be an excuse. If we're gonna have absentee ballots, we need to get rid of no excuse absentee ballots, absolutely.
There's a second question for that. You're talking about how people should be held into account for breaking our laws. How would you go about doing that with Gary? That was actually Bell who said that, you brought it up. Would you be willing to, what kind of punishments, I guess?
Yeah.
What are,
Look, the law, as a Secretary of State, I am not part of the legislative branch, right? This is an executive branch, so we have three equal branches. This Secretary of State is an executive branch. As a member of Congress, I'm now part of the legislative branch on federal level. So it is the legislative branch that makes the laws and the consequences for breaking the law, but the executive branch enforces it. And right now, Brad Raffensperger is not enforcing the law and going after people who break our laws with elections, and we've got to have that leadership. But the process is, someone violates the law, then there is an investigation. The Secretary of State's office has a robust investigative team to go in and investigate the situation, and if there is found in the investigation criminal activity, then the Secretary of State refers with a criminal prosecution referral or a civil prosecution referral, whatever the case may be, to the appropriate judicial branch and so forth, where then it goes from there. So the Secretary of State cannot prosecute people, but what he does is refer, after investigation, makes criminal or civil referrals to the appropriate place that then makes the prosecution. But that's not happening. Right now, last I checked, Brad there were only like 32 civil prosecution or referrals that had taken place. And the maximum fine for a civil activity is $250. With all that happened in our state, are you kidding me? So, and that's all that's happened at this point. Yes, sir.
Congressman, first of all, I appreciate the passion you brought to Washington, D.C. Though you never represented us, I always felt like you represented the state of Georgia. And I'm sorry to lose that voice on the Hill.
Thank you very much.
Obviously, the passion around elections is huge. Hopefully, we'll get this fixed and move forward. But the Secretary of State's office also has another large responsibility, a lot of other large responsibilities. And one of the things that I think that we were talking about a little bit earlier is that while there is a separation, you can be the chief lobbyist.
Absolutely.
For what I think the state needs for business moving forward and lobbying the legislature. And there are things that I think that we have done in Georgia that through the Secretary of State's office hinder the growth of small business and licensing. And like I think the thing I mentioned earlier is I still don't know why when I go down to Great Clips and get my hair cut, that person has to have a license to cut my hair. Yeah. Because I had my hair cut when I was in the dormitory in the military, and that guy didn't have a license.
That's funny.
I just want to know what you can help do to streamline some of these things to help small business growth.
Okay, let me look. The Secretary of State cannot, on his own, streamline those categories of licensing come through the General Assembly. I mean, they vote on those things. Again, the Secretary of State has to enforce them and license them. But let me say a couple of things real quickly. Although the Secretary of State's office is not part of the legislative branch, nonetheless, and this comes from a lot of experience in Washington and being a part of the legislative branch, I would go into this office with a legislative agenda. Although I'm no longer a legislator, there would be very much a legislative agenda to work with the General Assembly to pass some legislation that would both strengthen our election laws and strengthen our business community with the licensing and the registration and all this kind of, which by the way is also a train wreck in this current Secretary of State's office. I cannot tell you how many businesses have contacted us saying, we filed our license renewal months ago, in plenty of time before it was due, and here we're 2, 3, 4, as much as 6 months after the fact, and they still don't have their license renewed. And they're technically operating illegally without a renewed license because the Secretary of State's office has not renewed their license. It's just an excuse. And here we are, the #1 state for business in the country, and yet we have this kind of stuff making it so difficult for businesses to continue doing their job. The Secretary of State's office on that side of the business has to reflect the type of state we have that attracts businesses, and those businesses that come here must be able to operate and get their licenses, their registration, all that kind of stuff with the ease that's both safe for businesses and the customers, all that kind of stuff, as seamlessly as possible. And right now we're far from that.
Are you for paper ballot hand count?
Yes, I am. Yeah. Listen, another thing, and I didn't mention this, but the voters of Georgia have lost confidence in the Dominion voting machines. And wherever people have lost confidence in the system, then we need another system. And I don't know that there is any system any safer, any more pure, any more here it is than paper ballots. Now, that doesn't mean that, again, Secretary of State can't make that move. That's got to come through the General Assembly. But here again, as part of a legislative agenda, that we have got to deal with the Dominion problem and replace it with something that brings confidence to the voters that their votes are going to count. And this QR code is not, that we don't know what in the world it's actually registering, but it is what it is. And that's not to say that there may not be some other system that's just as secure, totally open for all things on the table. But yes, I will take paper ballots any day over the current system we have with the mini machines. One more question.
So I asked the other candidate this, what is your plan or what ideas do you have to reconcile the voter registration with the state of Georgia? Because I told them, I've canvassed in Florida, I canvassed here, and it's not just Fulton County or the other counties, it's all over. You can go to an address and you've got 20 people listed as being registered at that address. So
Yep.
that's my question. What plan do you
Great question. Currently, the law says that you cannot have any, whatever you want to call it, cleansing, purging, changing, whatever, of our voter registration files within 6 months of an election. So you gotta quit there. And right out of the gate, I say, why 6 months? Why is that some arbitrary, magical number? I feel as though, why don't we cleanse them up until we start voting? Let's make sure that when we vote, we have the most clean, pure registration files that we can. Why? People die 6 months before elections. They move 6 months before election. There are all sorts of things. Why do we arbitrarily say nothing before 6 months? But anyways, that's another issue. Look, I think we need to, the Secretary of State's office needs to be working in conjunction with the coroners of every county.
Here.
We know who's,
Here.
look, we know who dies.
File a death certificate.
We have death certificates, that needs to come through the Secretary of State's office,
Yes.
and these people immediately need to be removed from our files. Same with moving. Everybody in here has moved before. Probably when you moved, you did not notify your county elections board once you moved and said, hey, just want to let y'all know, I no longer live in Hall County or whatever the case may be. But you did notify your post office
Yes.
that, hey, we now have a change of address, would you please forward our mail to this address, this is where we now live. Why is that information not shared with the Secretary of State's office, so that we have death certificates, we have change of address certificate? Look, Amazon does this every single day. This is not rocket science to utilize technology that is readily available every single day, and the Secretary of State's office needs to utilize this stuff. Right now, the law says you can't do it within 6 months of election, but that on non-election years, you must at least cleanse the rolls at least once during non-election years. I feel as though it ought to be a weekly, systematic, monthly, ongoing system to where it is in place with the coroner's offices, with change of address offices, with all this kind of stuff that we have access to, so that it is a perpetual cleansing of our rolls, so that when the time comes for elections, we know we have done the best job we can do to make sure.
Well, part of that reason, it took them 3 months to get me my voter registration.
Me too. Me too. Listen, with that, I want to say thank y'all for letting me be here. I have, like I said, one of the greatest honors of my life is represent the 10th District of Georgia, just out here for the last 8 years. And one of the great goals that I have had during that time is for us to add to our Georgia representation the best candidates that we can get, and let's keep Georgia conservative. And I was so pleased this last election that your Congressman, Andrew Clyde, was elected. I, of course, have endorsed Andrew, but let me just tell you, after a year and a half now, the learning curve in Washington is like this. I mean, it takes a lot. Andrew, I have watched him. He is doing an outstanding job. He is learning so rapidly. He is a fighter. He is in the trenches. He serves with, he is on the oversight committee with me now. So I'm watching him on oversight, question these people, going after these people with waste, fraud, and abuse in our government. He is tip of the spear going after these people. I'm watching him on the floor. His vote record is conservative, solid, consistent. You don't have to worry where Andrew Clyde is on your conservative voting record. I'm watching him speak on the House floor. He gets up with conviction and he gives it all he's got, and it's great stuff. And I'm just telling you, I am so pleased that Andrew Clyde is with us in Washington. He's part of the Freedom Caucus with us. Y'all, by the way, in Freedom Caucus, we kind of affectionately refer to ourselves as the Republican wing of the Republican Party. It's a group of people who are fighting for what we believe in. And I just tell you, Andrew is doing an outstanding job, and y'all are blessed to have him as your representative in Washington. And I urge you to re-elect Andrew Clyde in this upcoming election. He is doing an outstanding job. And with that, it's my privilege to introduce my great friend, has been for a long time, Andrew Clyde.
Thank you, Congressman Heiss or Jody. It truly has been the honor of my lifetime to represent the 9th District, and it's amazing to be able to be up on the House floor and to fight, to really, instead of yelling at the television anymore, I get to actually yell in person, and that actually kind of cleanses the soul, I think. But to be with Jody Heiss, to sit with him on the House floor and discuss legislation with him, and discuss tactics and how we fight the Democrats and how we bring our 9th District conservative values back to America, because that's what the House needs. That's what the Senate needs. We truly have to bring America first values back to our country. That is not what's happening in Washington, D.C. But today I'm pleased that my wife Jennifer, she's with me. She doesn't often get to be with me, but some of you may or may not know she is a professional violinist with her doctorate in violin performance, and she's a top tier professional, and she actually teaches at Truett McConnell University. She's their adjunct professor, their strings professor there for violin and viola. But it's wonderful to have Jennifer with me, and you can't do what you do in Washington, D.C. without support on the home front. And I have total support from her in this, and I have support from the 9th District too. I need that as well, because it's a battle up there, ladies and gentlemen. It truly is. And the Democrats will do everything in their power to tear you down and to silence your voice, and we cannot allow that. We will never allow that. Never allow ourselves to be silenced. Just like what the Supreme Court decision, the potential one, the draft decision that was leaked that we saw a couple weeks ago, with the intent to influence the justices to change their decisions, all right? And so we've been very vocal on the House floor. We've been very vocal in every form of media that we have, and encouraging the justices, because honestly, I don't think they get enough encouragement, because they have taken a strong stance for life. And think about it. The left has become totally unhinged, and their radical side is showing why. Why? Because we're trying to protect innocent human life. Trying to prevent people, the most innocent of all, from being murdered. And that's what they're doing. This is just unconscionable. So we stood strong. We had a special order on it. We both spoke, Jody and I. The Freedom Caucus had a time on the House floor where we told the nation about this and encouraged every one of the Supreme Court justices, because they need our encouragement. They're people. Samuel Alito had to be taken to an undisclosed location because the radical left was so violent in front of his house. And actually, that's a violation of federal law. That's a felony. Okay, to do that sort of thing, to try and influence justices, to influence the outcome of a court decision. All right. And so we had to encourage him, and we had to demand that the Justice Department investigate these people who are breaking the law in front of the Supreme Court Justice's house. I mean, they were all about investigating January 6th, okay? But where are they in protecting our Supreme Court justices? So we had to call on that. We had to write letters to them. and demand that they do that. But truly, it has been my honor to serve you, and I want to give you just a little bit of my background. Some of you may have heard my story, some have not. But I started life as a Navy officer. I'm a combat veteran. I've got 11 years active service, 17 years as a reserve. I started life in the aviation side as a supply officer of a fighter squadron. Went to aircraft carrier, to the Midway, then to Naval Air Station Jacksonville, to the aircraft carrier Saratoga, and then up to what brought me to Georgia was the Navy Supply Corps School in Athens to teach aviation logistics. I left active duty there, went and got my master's degree at the University of Georgia. So I'm a Georgia alum, go Dogs. So I got my MBA there, and then started a small business called Clyde Armory, which was a hobby business at the time. It was a business selling firearms. I've been involved in protecting and defending the Second Amendment for over 30 years, and that's why one of the reasons I actually have that black rifle on my sign. It says "Protect the Second" under it. The Second Amendment is so important in defending the First Amendment. The most important thing we've got is words. They're the most powerful because they actually will change people's hearts and minds and change their actions. But we will never safeguard a First Amendment without a Second Amendment. We're the most free country in the world. We're the most prosperous country in the world because we have that right of freedom of speech, and it is defended by a Second Amendment. Right of the people to keep and bear arms. And so as a business owner, one of the things that you look at kind of the motto for your business. And so that motto was, we enable individual participation in the preservation of liberty. Because if you think about it, that's really what a firearms dealer does. He enables people to access their constitutional rights, their Second Amendment rights, all right? From the manufacturer to the regular citizen, has to go through a dealer. So that's what we do. So that was my business, and I loved it. As a veteran turned small business owner, I was living the American dream until April of 2013, when the Internal Revenue Service came in and confiscated $940,000 from my business. They did it through civil asset forfeiture, unlawfully, through civil asset forfeiture. They claimed I was depositing my legally earned money incorrectly in the bank. I didn't know that I could deposit money incorrectly in the bank, but that's what the IRS said. So my attorney and my accountant went to them with me and said, hey, this is legally earned money and it's properly reported. Give it back. And they said, we'll give you back 2/3 of it if you forfeit 1/3 of it, $325,000 to us. And I'm like, no, absolutely not. I'm not going to do that. What have I done wrong? I've done nothing wrong. And to me, that was extortion. Yeah. That was extortion by the federal government on a citizen that was obeying the law. In fact, we even got from them in writing that the money was legally earned and properly reported. And they, as the IRS likes to do, they audited me for 4 years. 4 years of personal return, 4 years of my business returns, found absolutely nothing, and confirmed that indeed it was legally earned and properly reported. So I took them to court. I sued them in federal court. And that was in April of 2013. In August of 2013, we resolved that case and I got my money back from them. We won. October of 2013, a month and a half later, I was sitting in the Oversight Subcommittee of House Ways and Means with their staff, with the Chief of Staff, telling my story to him, saying, hey, how can the government do this? This is wrong. So I was bringing a grievance to the government, like the Constitution says we can. They looked at me and said, well, this has to be a one-up. This just, can't be happening regularly. This is an anomaly. Well, the more they looked into it, the more they found out this was not an anomaly. This was happening to citizens all across the country. In fact, eventually, through all the investigations, they found out it had happened to over 700 individuals, and it started in 2009. Well, what happened in 2008? Obama got elected. He had weaponized the IRS against individuals, and Lois Lerner, that was a part of it as well. But So I got the opportunity to testify against the IRS in February of 2015, 16 months later. I was invited to Washington, D.C. To testify against Commissioner Koskinen. There were 3 of us there. There was a dairy farmer, there was a candy distributor, and there was a gun dealer. And the 3 of us gave our testimony about IRS abuse. I mean, that's Americana right there. You look at that spread of individuals, but all conservatives. And so through that testimony, in fact, actually, during that subcommittee, the chairman, Peter Roscom, demanded that the IRS Commissioner Koskinen apologize to us. And I got a personal apology for IRS abuse from the commissioner of the IRS in that hearing right then and there. And I said, thank you, Commissioner Koskinen. Now make it right. Well, he would apologize to me, but he had no intention of making it right. So legislation was crafted, and they called it the Respect Act. You know, I think it's about time. I really like that name because it was about time that the IRS gave American people some respect, because they just are not doing it. But they ended up calling that legislation after the 3 of us who testified against the IRS. They call it the Clyde Hirsch Sowers Respect Act. And RESPECT stands for Restraining Excessive Seizure of Property Through the Exploitation of Civil Asset Forfeiture Tools Act. I think only a politician could figure that one out. I thought it was a good name. It passed the House unanimously in the 114th Congress, but didn't get a vote in the Senate, so it died. It was resurrected in the 115th Congress. Again, did not get a vote in the Senate, so it died. In the 116th Congress, the chairman, Peter Roscom, was defeated, and Congressman Doug Collins took that bill up. He became the primary sponsor of it. Again, it passed unanimously in the House of Representatives. And he worked with the Senate, with Senator Grassley, to bring that bill to a vote in the Senate. And it passed unanimously in June of 2019 in the Senate. So both the House and the Senate passed this bill unanimously. President Trump signed that bill into law July 1st of 2019. And it permanently took away the authority of the Internal Revenue Service to ever do to anyone else what they did to me. So not only did I take them to court and get my money back from them, but I went after them and took away their authority to do this to anyone ever again. And you know, what that showed me is that one individual who is determined, who believes in what he's doing is the right thing and will not give up, will fight. Even one person can take on the most feared agency in the federal government, the IRS, and take them down a notch. So that's kind of my story. That's one of the things that brought me onto the stage when Congressman Collins decided that he was going to run for Senate and the seat became open. Then the folks in the 9th District decided that, well, I guess Andrew Clyde, if he can fight the IRS, then he can fight the federal government. So it was my honor to receive your thumbs up and your vote in 2020. So I'm asking for your vote again in 2022 on the May 24th primary. So I'm asking for your support there. But it has been a privilege to work with Congressman Heiss as well. He's a fighter, and I fully endorse him as Secretary of State. I've seen him on the House floor. I've seen the way he works. I've seen his dedication. And I know that election integrity, I know we've got a lot of issues that the Biden administration has caused, whether it is the energy crisis, the cancellation of the Keystone XL pipeline. You see gas prices going through the roof because we're no longer energy independent. Whether it's the crisis at the southern border, which you're seeing wave after wave of illegals coming across. And then we have a supply chain crisis, and we realize that the current administration is putting Americans second. They're putting illegals first, even when it comes to baby food. I mean, you've seen that. You've seen pallet after pallet of formula go to the southern border to take care of illegals when there isn't enough of it to take care of our children here, our American citizens. That's wrong. That's absolutely dead wrong. So you're seeing crisis after crisis after crisis. But really the number one thing, and you can add inflation to that too, which hurts every one of us in a huge way. But the number one thing is election integrity. Because if we don't have election integrity, then we really don't have a Democrat republic. We have a banana republic. That's what we have. One person, one legal vote. You cannot be canceled by someone with an illegal vote. If you can, we don't have a constitution. We don't have a republic. We are not the freest country of the world. In fact, Jody had talked about the database of registered voters. Well, my father passed away in November. Some of you saw in our newsletter. I dedicated a newsletter to him. He was one of the greatest generation. He was a World War II veteran in the Army Air Corps. He was a Korean War veteran as well. So truly a fighter and a man of God. He was a pastor as well. So I grew up a preacher's kid. But when my father passed away, my brother was the executor of the state, and he said, Andrew, he said, I promise you that the coroner and that the undertaker, all right, the funeral director will make sure that my father's name is off the roll. Because if it's one thing I don't want is after an entire lifetime of voting Republican, I don't want after my father dies for him to vote Democrat. So election integrity is that can't happen. It absolutely cannot happen. Be allowed to happen. But so voter integrity is so absolutely vitally important, because it will take voter integrity for us to turn around all of these crises that the current administration is causing. And they are the cause of it. They are 100% the cause of it. Their policies have caused it. November's a-coming, ladies and gentlemen. November's a-coming. And, the 9th District, I'm so proud of the 9th District. And I know, Jody, I'm sorry. I know you're the congressman for the 10th District, but the 9th District is the largest Republican voting bloc in the entire state of Georgia. Exactly. In 2020, we voted 60,000 more Republican votes than any other congressional district. That's strong, ladies and gentlemen. That's super strong. We've got to keep that up. And I hear that it's continuing. That the early voting is beyond what we ever saw, like 3 or 4 or 5 times what we saw in 2018. So hallelujah for that. Keep it up. Keep it up. Encourage your neighbors and your friends. Do not forget to vote on the 24th. Yes, sir. Now I'll take questions.
What are we going to do about all these drugs coming into this nation? Fentanyl.
Fentanyl?
Chinese are making it.
Fentanyl is a huge problem.
Other stuff.
Well,
people are dying every day from fentanyl.
Yes, sir, they are. Yes, sir, they are. And that is one of the problems that our open borders are causing. We have had over 100,000 people, Americans, die just this last year. The primary cause is fentanyl overdose. It is unconscionable. In fact, Jody was in that. We had the commissioner, the Border Protection, the Border Patrol commissioner with us in our border caucus just last week, was it? Last week. And one of the very last things, just like Secretary Mayorkas, they don't know how to tell the truth. They just don't. He says we have a secure border. It was so funny. Andy Biggs, the former chairman of the Freedom Caucus, really? He goes, you do. So he pulled from behind him a placard which had, I think, the 2006 Fence Act definition, okay, of a secure border. All right, and in no way is what's going on right now. He just said, so is this your definition of a secure border? No, that's not my definition. Well, this is what the code says is the definition of a secure border. So we caught him in that lie right there. But I told him that one of the very last things I told him, I said, sir, I said, when we take back the House in 2023, I promise you that we are going to impeach Secretary Mayorkas for what he has done on the southern border, how he has damaged this country. I said, the only question for you, sir, is whether you're going to be there with him or not, whether you uphold the law or not. And he looked at me. I saw the terrified look in his eyes. And I tell you what, that's exactly what's going to happen. We are going to, I'm on the oversight committee, all right? The oversight and judiciary, they're going to be the 2 spears into the Biden administration. And I'm so looking forward to it. Yes, sir.
question I have is, what I've recently heard, which is very disturbing to me, is that the Biden administration has sent amendments to the World Health Organization concerning healthcare and national sovereignty, that to turn it over to them. So if they think that another COVID-19 has come, that it's not up to this country to be able to shut it down, that it would be up to the World Health Organization to shut it down. Is that just fictitious, or is that true? That's what's going on.
They might try and do that, okay? But when we're the majority in Congress, there's no way in the world we'll let them do it. We will not give up the sovereignty of this nation for anything. Not the World Health Organization, not the United Nations. We will never give up the sovereignty of this nation.
Is that something they can do before November?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think they can do that. Not and have it mean anything. But we will not give up the sovereignty of this nation.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, sir.
I have two things, really. You were talking about how there was the leaked Supreme Court draft.
Right.
And how people were going out in front of going out in front of
Justice's homes.
Justice's homes
Mhm.
and protesting. Why not just try and educate people about this kind of stuff? Because this is a subject that a majority of Americans, about 69% of people who in America who uphold it, don't actually know what Roe v. Wade is about. Why not educate them on these subjects? And how are you not going, or at least from, I don't know you that well, this is probably my first time, I think, hearing about you. How can you prove to me that you're not going to kowtow and bow to the mob? That's pretty much the left and how they're ruling, because that's basically what they're doing, is ruling by mob, by doing what they're doing outside of the justices' homes.
Look at my voting record. Just look at my voting record. I have as strong a conservative voting record, I think, as anyone in Congress. And Jody and I are both right there with each other. When it comes to pro-life, I've got an A+ rating from Susan B. Anthony list, 100% rating when it comes to Family Research Council, and the folks that put on CPAC got 100% rating with them too. I'm not going to bow to the left, not 1 inch. I didn't bow to the IRS, okay, and they're probably way more scary than the left. So there's no way in the world I'm bowing to the left for anything.
Actually, I did just think of something that's probably
Sure.
There was a documentary that was just put out by Daily Wire that I just remembered a section of it. It's going back to licensing. With Roe v. Wade, the abortion industry is one of the most underregulated industries in all of America. Would you be willing to introduce legislation and regulations to help bring them up higher than someone who has to have like a license or certification for running something like a nail salon, because they are far below that?
I want to put them under the ground.
Okay.
I don't want to license them. I want, Roe v. Wade, what that's going to do is it's going to take away the federal cover of law, okay, over abortion, and it sends it back to the states. And I believe that our state right here will do the right thing and make sure that abortion is not legal in the state of Georgia. But I have no intention for abortion to be legal for any reason whatsoever in any state of the United States, except to save the life of the mother, because you're still saving life there. You've got one or the other, you're still saving life. But no, I want the abortion industry to absolutely go away. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you for your military service as well.
It's an honor to serve. And you for yours. By the way, I'm with you on the haircut there, okay?
Yeah, I need one. That's why I was thinking.
No, but the experience of it, yeah, I've been there.
I've had a little bit of experience being an elected official and on groups, and I've been in a minority and I've been in the majority. And I will say, being in the minority is actually easier, because it's easy to vote no. You can always find a reason to vote no. That's easy. next year we'll have a majority, and we talk about, that's great, we can start doing some investigations, but hopefully 2 years after that, we have a Republican in the White House too.
Right, yep,
That's when your job really gets hard,
Yep,
because now we
agreed.
have to vote yes.
Mhm.
And we've got a lot of issues that are called the third rail of politics. We've got problems in this country that nobody wants to seem to address. And you're gonna have Republicans, you're in a strong conservative district, but you're gonna have Republicans that are in these,
Squishy
purple,
districts.
whatever districts, and we're gonna need their vote
Mhm.
on what are we gonna do about entitlements and things like that.
Right.
Let's project forward 2 more elections for you and put you in that seat. How do we get these problems solved when we have the Senate, the White House, and the House?
Well, I will tell you that really I'm just focused on this year, okay? Because I don't know what the future actually holds. But I will tell you that as a proud member of the Freedom Caucus, all right, if it's one thing that we know we have to do, we have to be able to stand and say no, even when we're in the majority. But we also have to say yes when we're in the majority too. You can stop bad legislation, but you can't move good legislation with a no vote. You can only move good legislation with a yes vote. That's where I ask people to pray for me for wisdom. Wisdom and discernment and the ability to articulate it, because that's what it requires. God has the answers. He really does. We just have to be in tune with him and figure out where he wants us to be. And he'll give us the wisdom to do that. I've never been in the majority. Okay, I've only been in the minority. I'm so looking forward to the majority. But I will tell you this. I have a very special position right now. I am what's called the elected leadership representative for the freshman class. The freshman and sophomore class both have that. And it's only your class that elects you. That person at the table of leadership, there's Kevin McCarthy, who's our minority leader, Whip Scalise, then you've got Elise Stefanik, who is our conference chair, and Mike Johnson, who's our deputy chair. You've got Richard Hudson, who's our secretary. And then you have the sophomore rep, Guy Reschenthaler, and you have me. I'm the freshman rep. I was elected by my freshman class to sit at the table of leadership. I'm the first member of the Freedom Caucus ever to sit at the table of leadership. What that does is that gives us a voice. I'm the lowest one on the totem pole, okay? But I'm there. I'm there. And, in Washington, when you're a member of Congress, you're one of 435. That's less than 1/4%. To pass a bill, one of 218, less than 1/2%. You can't do anything by yourself. You have to build relationships and work in coalitions, which is why the Freedom Caucus is so strong. We've got about 40 members of the Freedom Caucus. And we build relationships and we vote pretty much as a block, That gives us tremendous strength. We're 20% of what it takes to move a bill. So we can stop bad legislation and we can help move good legislation. So that's kind of where I am on it. That's the best answer I can give you right then or right now. But pray for me, please. Please, every one of you, I covet your prayers for both me and for Jennifer back there, because it's really tough on her. It's tough on her when the media says really nasty and untruthful things about me. Think about, if your husband, I assume, if somebody badmouthed him, how would you feel? It's just wrong. It's just absolutely wrong. And that hurts. It hurts down deep inside. So pray for Jennifer on that too. But yes, anyone? I see somebody with a Daniel Defense hat back there. I love that. Yes, sir.
So the budget deficit is over $2 trillion. The national debt is over $30 trillion.
Right,
When is
31.
Congress going to balance the budget? Like I have to do every time I get paid.
And like I have to do with my personal business.
Exactly.
Well, I think sending more business people to Washington, D.C. Will help on that. So that skill set that I have is very important. I was actually talking to the ranking member of budget, Jason Smith, who he might be the chairman of budget next year, or we might have somebody else. I don't know if he's going to run for that or not. But but we have to start with a balanced budget. I think that should be one of the things that we do next year. Even our leader, McCarthy, okay, says that the greatest internal threat we have is the fact that we're spending more than we're taking in. And he recognizes that. He recognizes that we have to do something about that. We have got to balance our budget. I'm for a balanced budget amendment. I think our Constitution should be amended to say that we have to have a balanced budget, because there are too many people in Washington, D.C. that like opium. And that's OPM, and that's other people's money, okay? Too many people in D.C. love that and are hooked on it, and they like to spend it. I'm not one of those people. I believe, and that's one of the other reasons I voted against the Ukraine supplement. $40 billion, 15 billion of it, which was nothing, had nothing to do with actual military support to Ukraine, but it wasn't paid for. It would have added $40 billion to our debt. And we just keep printing money and printing money. When's it going to stop? You know, it's going to be, young lady, it's going to be your responsibility. You know, and I don't want to put that on you. Okay? Right. And by design, you know, the folks of us who make those decisions, you know, we'll be dead and gone by the time you got to pay the bill. I'm not for that. I'm for financially responsible, fiscally responsible, being a good steward of our taxpayer money, because this is your money. This is your money. Okay, this is not my money. I'm just responsible for it. All right, and I need to be fiscally, financially responsible. You know, so we're going to have to do that. That is a focus of us in 2023, and I'm going to make sure that it stays a focus of us. Think about it. We've got to have a budget that is less than the revenue we take in order to pay down the almost $31 trillion of our debt. We cannot allow it to continue to go up. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
One last question. Once Republicans take the House and the Senate, which they will in November, and the snake in the White House, they just keep him. Is the only thing he can do then is just executive orders as he tries. You know, you veto this, and then the House is the purse.
Right.
So a lot of these programs, if you stop the purse and you stop the money, do you stop this program?
Well, we have 12 appropriations and one bill called the National Defense Authorization Act, okay, the NDAA, that have to pass every solitary year, right? And that's our leverage. That is our leverage to move that agenda forward, and we're going to use it. We're committed to using it. The Republicans have created 7 task forces, and those task forces are building the legislation necessary for us on day 1 on January 3rd, 2023, to be able to start implementing that. And that's what we're going to do. The first 6 months of 2023, we will be implementing the legislation that we're working on right now. And that is to right the ship and bring America back to where we need to be. So, thank you very much. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you so much, Bruce. I appreciate you visiting us. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I want to again say, as we missed on our last feed, there will be a watch party on the 24th of May at the Oaks Miniature Golf, and that starts at 7 p.m. I hear it's a great place to go. I haven't been yet. I'm excited when I actually have time to go to visit. But before we close, I'd like to have Richard Strout come up. I really wanted to get him up to be able to speak. He hasn't had the opportunity. If you can take a couple minutes just to come up here and tell us about your campaign for running for, I've totally said it again and I forgot. I think it's 49, right? Did I get it right? All right, District 49. So Richard Strout, who is running for District 49 here in Hall County.
Thank you. First off, my name is Richard Strout, and I'm running for Senate District 49, the one that Butch Miller is vacating to run for Lieutenant Governor. I was born and raised in Stone Mountain, Georgia, and joined the Georgia Army National Guard and was commissioned a second lieutenant aviation and I was in the winder unit for many years. And I am a retired Atlanta police sergeant. And I moved to Gainesville and saw what was going on at the Capitol. And my two basic issues are law and order and taxes. Now, I want to explain a little something about law and order. What goes on in the district attorney's office should be very concerning for all of you. What the DA's office does is they dead docket about 90% of the cases that come across their desk. When an officer makes an arrest, the DA indicts them, and they set the case aside until the perpetrator has about 15 cycles of arrest. And then they actually take them to trial. I've got 2 open records requests in, one for Hall and one for Fulton. And Fulton just answered, and I asked them how many ADAs they have, and I asked them how many Part 1 crimes they receive monthly and annually, and I asked them how many cases that they dead docket, and they answered, and the report says that information doesn't exist. So that should tell you it's worse than we thought. Now, what I want to do when elected, I want to create a piece of legislation that requires every district attorney in Georgia to report their cases to the Secretary of State's office or in the AG's office, and that information be made public. We need to hold these DAs accountable. If they are letting these criminals go, we need to know. And we need to have the Attorney General to stay on top of these district attorneys to make sure they prosecute these criminals. It's not when or if that you will be a victim of a crime. If you got to go to Atlanta right now, I guarantee you, there's a good chance you're going to get your car broken into. It is off the chain down there, folks. 30 years in that city, I've seen the crime. Nothing like it has happened, and it is moving this way. And I'm the candidate to take care of that problem. Secondly, I want to deal with a tax issue. When I moved to Hall County and looked at my tax record, I thought, that's a lot of money going to the county every year. You know, it's part of something that you budget. But if you're 55 and older, you look at that, and then you have these commissioners, every year they go up on the taxes. And if they don't get you going up on taxes, they get you with the millage rate. That has got to stop. We have got to reel that in to make it where when you buy your property, that is your fixed tax rate, and that's what you pay. If we put a piece of legislation in, we'll make it where these county commissioners and these city officials have to manage their budgets appropriately. There are so many properties being sold in the state of Georgia, they can readjust that rate for the new purchases and balance that out. So that's what I want to do as a legislator in the State House. And I think I've got the leadership skills to make that happen. I've got a website. My last name is Strout, S-T-R-A-U-T. And you can look me up. It's got my positions there. And I'll entertain any questions. Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you so much for everyone for coming. Please go out and vote. Please do not give up your American right. It is so important. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for coming. Have a great afternoon.